Hello guys, it's Joel from Sinoid. How you guys doing? We're doing another tutorial today, and today I feel like teaching you guys how to make a super saw, basic super saw, nice wide super saw, because it's honestly one of my favorite sounds to make, and it's one of my favorite sounds overall in general. I'm always in pursuit of like making the perfect super saw, and I feel like Massive is a pretty good synth to use, although Silence does, I think, an even better job. But I've I've messed with Massive for so long that I tend to just want to make everything on it. So if you guys are interested in how to make a super saw, uh, yeah, just watch this tutorial. So we're gonna start with the volume envelope. Make sure it's sustain is all the way up, and that you have your first oscillator set to saw. Um, uh, yeah, now it's just a bit sharper, as you can tell. And usually I like to use all of them. I'm just crazy like that. So yeah, just set all the oscillators to saw 1. They're all going to be spectrum, and yeah, they're all going to be turned on, obviously. And yeah, now we have a pretty nice sound rate going on right there. Sounds thicker now. So the next thing to do would be to go to the voicing. Now this is important because you're gonna want to set this to 4 or 8, depending on how chorusy and and detuned you want your saw sounding. So I usually like to set it to 8 when I want it to sound a bit more yeah detuned and chorused. Yeah, you can tell already. It's it's all in the middle. It's mono. So I mean mono as in the stereo image. That's why it sounds so like thick and centered, and that's why this pan position exists right here, because you go from mono to stereo. Now, if you're listening to this through your computer, you might not be able to tell as much, but if you have studio monitors, or if you're listening to this on external sound monitors, um, if you have them, of course, left and right, you're gonna tell a difference, a huge difference. So this is all relative to the stereo image of your sound. You want to make sure you have polyphony going on, so you can make nice chords. Polyphony, if you guys don't know, just means that you're able to play more than one note. And at the moment, you could play up to I don't know how many. You could probably play a bunch of notes. Usually there's this denotes how many voices you can have, um, or your polyphony. There's usually I'm sorry. This means how many voices are in the sound itself, and in your polyphony, usually there's like in silent that lets you know how many notes you can play at one time. So yeah, you want to make sure that this is set to polyphonic and not monophonic, so that you can play your chords. Afterwards, we can go in to hear the pitch cutoff, and this adds some detuning to the sound. All of a sudden, magic. You have a pretty decent song, and yeah, this will actually determine the amount of detuning you want. Right now, it's set to 1 semitone, so it would actually detune in the range of 1 semitone, or as yeah, basically 1/2 step if you want to go theoretically into music theory. But yeah, it's just basically gonna detune from one note to the very next note on the keyboard in the right direction of a keyboard. So that means going up in pitch. If you go down in pitch, it's gonna sound not that much more different because it's gonna detune. But if you go any lower than that, you can start telling the difference immediately. So yeah, you don't want to detune too much because if not, you start getting scary sounds, and you just want some light detuning on it. You don't want too much. And so I mean, the best way to make a saw, I mean the whole magic behind a saw is actually in the detuning, in the fine detuning of it. Because I mean, I've been making this sound for so long that I've come to learn that the whole aspect of it, the whole essence of a saw is to detune it, detune saw waves basically. And then because of that factor, I actually even like to go to the pitch and even pitch it up either 4 or 10 and pitch this one down 4 or 10. It adds even more character to it. So 4 or 10 or just any fine tuning in sense. You don't want to get into the semitones because this is like a finer way of tuning it. And I usually just detune in pitch only 2 of them. If you want to go ahead and do it to the middle one, I mean that's your preference already. And if you find it to be more tasteful, then go right ahead, be my guest. But yeah, since you're routing them all to the first filter, you want to make sure this is all the way up, all the way up. Since we're using only one filter in this tutorial, this really doesn't matter because it's gonna go through the filter one anyways, as you can see in the routing. If you send it to filter 1, regardless of it being serial or parallel, it's gonna get filtered anyways. So yeah, see, it doesn't matter. So yeah, you could do a second order low pass or first. Depends how you like the filtering to sound. And if you wanted to have highs leak in there, use the first order. If you want a much more steeper filter, use the second order one. So now you have this. You could use daft if you'd like, but it will characterize your saw. It won't be a very transparent sounding saw. So use that to your preference again. If you want it to sound a bit even more, I guess detuned, adding white noise is always a good idea. Just make sure it doesn't start getting sharp. For the most part, you want it to sound soft. So afterwards, yeah, you can. I like adding reverb. Reverb is amazing. It's just magical. Like a supersaw without reverb is like a supersaw without, balls. So I mean, it adds that euphoric, I guess, aspect to it. It just gives it so much life. Yeah. And then adding sync the delay, usually I like to add um, eighth notes and dotted eighth notes, because the dotted eighth notes will create delays in between quarter notes, and that just you know, when you're doing like, of course you gotta, it just catches it on the offbeat, and it fills up uh, the space in between the notes, and it just gives it, you know, that nice that delayed effect that just, it's very pleasing to the ears. So especially when it tails like that, you know, if you have some space in between those notes. It's just awesome. And even if your notes are closely spaced, it will enhance the notes that fall onto the sync delay. So it's just an overall good idea, and you should do it. Of course, that's to your taste. If you find that maybe quarter notes are better, be my guest. If you find that, you know, you just want to stick to that, be my guest. I'm just saying that, you know, there are really, essentially, in the end, no rules to it. It's just all about trusting your ears and what sounds good to you, and if you make it work. So yeah, if you add for example, size will determine, yeah, like the name suggests, the size. So if you want it to sound like you're in make super space, you increase the size. This will essentially increase like the reverb signal to the dry signal. So yeah, you're gonna get like a lot of reverb effect on it, and none of the dry. So yeah, this mix knob is highly important. You gotta find the sweet spot. And then the density is actually it's hard to explain, but it's just how intense the reverb is. It's one of those things where you just gotta trust your ears. So it's kind of like that knob that you'd use if you like the mix between the dry and wet, but you just want a bit more verb in there. You use the density knob, and it just becomes wetter. Yeah, it's like a wetter knob. And then the colors just characterizes it in, you know, different ways. It's these are the two knobs that is like the very fine grain character knobs of the reverb. That's basically what it is. And then yeah, feedback just it lets you know how long the delay will go on. So once again, you know, this is just a beginner's tutorial on how to make a super saw. So that's why I'm kind of explaining these, I guess, basic producer concepts. But yeah, I just want to make sure I'm going in depth into this and giving you a good tutorial. I don't really like adding any sine shaper, parabolic shaper effects. Maybe bit crusher, a bit. I really don't use it often. But I guess what the bit crusher would do is just even make it more white noise oriented, and it'll add that like hiss that sometimes you kind of find in certain super saws. Adding just the right amount of hiss is kind of an art in itself. So try and, I guess, use that to your taste and your liking. And then ultimately, the super secret behind like adding more chorus to it, I would add, sometimes I'll depending on how I feel, if it calls for it, instead I'll add like a chorus or chorus ensemble, and that will make it more detuned in a way, and add more character and fullness to the sound. But I like using delay. But then again, you know, use chorus or chorus ensemble. Maybe you might find a better sounding super saw. But yeah, those are essentially the effects you want on a super saw. It's like reverb, delay, chorusing, and white noise in the back, right way in the background for the slight hiss. But yeah, essentially yeah. But I digress because I was actually going to talk about the vibrato. This adds, like, without it, with it. It somehow softens the sound and makes it smooth and not so sharp. It's amazing. It's quite an amazing effect. Adding just a bit of vibrato. Right now, it sounds a bit dull, so you know you can always EQ it. But yeah, you know that's essentially the super saw, and it just doesn't get more super than that. Um, that Big Crusher, I think, you know, actually did add a little bit of that, you know, good upper hiss. Um, it makes it just a bit that more detuned. So essentially, yeah, this is a basic super saw. Just remember that, you know, it's all saws, man, and you can for it to be a super saw, to me personally, it's like you gotta use all saws, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have to. You can always leak in like a pulse, you know, one of these PWM, a pulse width modulation oscillator. Those things they sound sick too. So ultimately, you know, they do sound a bit different. They add a different character. But yeah, ultimately it's experience. So just mess with it. Massive is such an awesome synth. I truly am in love with it. I've been using it from the earliest days of making EDM, and I don't see why people don't like it. It's kind of like, you know, you gotta date it for a bit, and then find out that it's actually an amazing synth. It may seem intimidating at first because of the interface, but you will find out very quickly that it is the most user-friendly synth out there. Right next to Silent. Silent is also an amazing plugin. I've been away from it for a bit because of producing more dubstep, but ultimately, my heart and is always gonna be in my roots, which is trance, and that's where I started off. And but yeah, this is a super saw. I hope that it helps you guys. It is ultimately one of the most. It kind of defines EDM. It's everywhere, and it's the most. I'm in love with it. It's like, I don't know. I don't want to go off on a tangent about it because, you know, I'm trying to keep this tutorial a bit short, even though I've digressed way too much. But yeah, I hope you guys really enjoyed this tutorial. I'm really excited to start doing more of these tutorials. So keep posted on new tutorials. Yeah. So remember to subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on SoundCloud at SinoidDub. Instagram at SinoidDub. And we got a Twitter, but it's not really being used that much right now. But yeah, so just keep a lookout for us. Thank you so much for watching these tutorials. I hope they really do help, and have a good one.